Hi, everyone. Pastor Don Smith here. Welcome to the Talk About It podcast, where we take relevant topics with a biblical point of view and we talk about it. You know you want to, and so do I. Let's talk about it. Welcome back, everyone, to Season 1, Episode 10 of Talk About It. Love our journey so far. What God has been sharing with us has been incredible. And I hope that it's helped you. If you're a person who's been struggling with depression, which is the topic we've decided to talk about on our first season of Talk About It, I hope that it's been helpful. I hope that maybe you've been able to share it with some friends or people that you know who maybe it can help them also. And so today, I want to jump right back into this. We only have a few more sessions that we're going to be doing here on Talk About It on the subject of depression. And we're going to move into Season 2, and we're going to take on a different subject. And so it might be interesting to hear from you all, my listeners, those who've been so faithful to listen time and time again. What are some of the subjects you might want to talk about? And share them with me. Put them in the comments. Just go right down there in Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen. Put the comments in there. Let me know. Maybe send me an email or a text or something like that. It'd be interesting. We've got a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts, but we definitely want to talk about what you want to talk about. And I love this idea of taking that concept with a biblical perspective and just seeing what God does and how He lays it out. So it's been a good journey so far. And today we're going to do the same thing as we enter into our next episode here of Talk About It on depression. Today I want to talk about cynicism. I'm going to use a famous Bible character one more time to show you how this works. To show you how cynicism plays a part of depression and how it can set in, and what we do when cynicism sets in. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon writes in chapter 1, verse 8, "All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing." Depression is the most cynical thing in the world. And I believe that we have a great example of that in the life of King Solomon. Isn't it odd that this is the case since he was a very wise man? At least that's what 1 Kings chapter 4 declares. He was also a man who had great personal success, and he was very wealthy. He had great power. He had wealth as a king, so he was able to enjoy the finer things in life and pursue all kinds of pleasurable activities. Sounds like a man who has everything to live for, doesn't it? Well, at one time in his life, he didn't. The book of Ecclesiastes illustrates that something was missing in Solomon's life, something he looked for but never found. Very interesting. The pursuit of life is an interesting thing. Watch what Solomon does. In his life, he's trying to find meaning. He's on a quest for a meaningful life. And in that, what he does is he pursues wisdom, he pursues knowledge, he pursues pleasure, he pursues wealth. And he studied and explored and succeeded in gaining incredible wisdom. With a similar passion, what he does is he plunged into a life of pleasure, madness, and foolishness. That's Ecclesiastes chapter 2. With equal effort, the interesting thing is he worked very hard. He built buildings, he planted vineyards, he did everything on a large scale, building a fortune and living in luxury. It's just an incredible story of a life of a man. And when he stopped and looked back at all he had accomplished at the end of his life, he realized something that I think a lot of people realize, and that his efforts had been for nothing. With wisdom came sadness, with pleasure came foolishness. No meaning had come from all his work. Wisdom, pleasure, wealth, success, they failed to give Solomon the fulfillment that he longed for. And I like to say that Solomon was a man who understood the blues. And if Solomon would have been a blues singer, he would have had a very famous song that I think would have been titled Vanity. And vanity is an interesting word. It means emptiness, uselessness, it means worthlessness. So to sing vanity is like saying life is really empty, or life is useless, or life is utterly meaningless. And to me, this just reveals how bleak Solomon's outlook on life was. He was in a place where he no longer enjoyed life. And let me tell you something. If you've been depressed, or you know someone who is depressed, that is a prime characteristic of depression, no longer enjoying life. And so Solomon makes this statement that reveals how he felt his life was like. In Ecclesiastes chapter 1, chapter 2, he talks about chasing after the wind. That's a phrase he uses, feeling like whatever you do doesn't matter. And if you feel that way, you know what I'm talking about. If you feel like no matter what you do matters, you understand that that can lead into depression. So Solomon is examining his life, and he's concluding that it's futile, his effort means nothing, that it's all resulted in this what's the use attitude. And that's another sign of depression, is a preoccupation with death. What's the point in living? Solomon had the gloomiest view of death of anyone in the Bible. Like he couldn't handle the fact that when people die, other people forgot about them. He wrestled with life and death, and he acknowledged that there is a season for everything, but even that acknowledgement didn't help him overcome his depression. It only made it more confusing or perplexing to him. He couldn't figure out what was God's purpose for life. He spends a great deal of time in chapter 3. Just what's the purpose of life? And if you read all of this stuff, it sounds like the rumination of a madman. And that's good and bad, the idea of ruminating. It can enable a person to study life. That's what Solomon was doing, to ponder on our observations and to come to insightful conclusions that maybe we can pass on to other people. But in reading Ecclesiastes, we read through the ruminations of Solomon, and that's why I think that the book of Ecclesiastes can sometimes seem very disorganized or even seem hard to follow. Because you understand a ruminator, someone who's going through, until they have resolved what has happened to them or found a meaningful explanation or a solution for what's happened to them, a ruminator will usually keep coming back to what is pressing on their mind. Their thoughts can even be contradictory or conflicting as they try to figure it out. They can be all over the place. They can be solid in one situation and then 10 minutes later be doubtful about it. A ruminator, I believe, is prone to developing depression if he or she is a pessimist. And that is exactly what Solomon was. He was a pessimist. At times, if we're honest, we all ruminate. You may even be doing it now as you're listening to these podcasts and wondering how someone like Solomon could be depressed. I mean, it's hard to understand why he felt the way he did. Really, to be honest with you, as I've studied the scripture, it's really not clear why. I mean, I don't think we know for sure. We can really only wonder. But it did have something to do with his life, that I am sure of. Commentators differ a little bit to one another about the age of Solomon. Some will say he was young, some will say he was old. But I don't really see him as young or old. I see him as somewhere in between. Why? Because as a middle-ager myself, middle-agers can count the years that they have left, and they can evaluate where they've been, which appears to me what Solomon's really doing in this book. Looking back, he's recognized his achievements. There's great wealth. There's built palaces, government offices. There's the temple. He was a successful king who had great power, fame, and wisdom. Like he had it all, and he should have been happy. But the problem was he wasn't. Something very important was missing. Verse 2 of chapter 1 in Ecclesiastes says, "Vanity of vanities," says the preacher, "vanity of vanities. All is vanity." That's an incredible scripture, because my first thought is he overreacting? Listen, if you've ever been depressed, if you're honest, you can know sometimes you've overreacted. Or if you've known someone who's been depressed or struggling with it and you're honest, you can admit that, hey, they overreacted a little bit. Is that what Solomon is doing here? Like, he never had the stress that Moses had. He never experienced the loss that Job experienced. He never experienced the rejection or the ridicule that Jeremiah experienced. But listen to this. Don't underestimate how demoralizing the loss of meaning can be. You never really realize the importance of meaning until it's gone. That is when you think, God doesn't have a purpose for my life. And if that sounds irrational, remember, we're talking about ruminators. They don't always make sense. You know, you agree with me, even if we haven't experienced depression, without purpose, we always tend to flounder and feel like our life is aimless. We don't know what to do next, and we question whether anything will be worth the effort. But if you're struggling with depression, the difficulty in struggling with a loss of purpose is that you can't talk about it because it's hard to find listeners who will be empathetic. Why? Because all those listeners, what do? They say things like, well, don't you believe that God has a purpose for your life? Well, of course he does. And then the conversation is usually over. It just kind of ends there. But after all Solomon had experienced, after all he had observed, I want to just think about this for a minute. After all he had chewed over, there was only one conclusion. And that is the meaning of life. And it was to honor God and to walk in obedience. This also happens to be the remedy for depression. You see, light and darkness often are things we use when we think about depression, because depression can feel like such a dark place. And those who maybe don't experience depression, we can see them as people who just always, live in the light. Solomon's discovery reminds us that meaning is found in a personal relationship with God and in doing his will, right? Honoring God and walking in obedience. But it also provides some help for getting over depression. Listen, emotional reasoning plays a role in nearly all depression. I want to say that again. Emotional reasoning plays a role in nearly all depression. See, because things feel so negative to the depressed person, then that person assumes they truly are. In other words, I feel abandoned by God, therefore I must be. Or I feel adequate, therefore I must be a worthless person. I'm not in the mood to work, so I might as well just stay in bed. And as you look at these statements, you know they're not true. No one's ever abandoned by God. All people have worth in God's eyes. The Bible has a lot to say about how and when to work, but it never says you need to be in the mood. Hello, somebody. Listen, honoring God and being obedient, it breaks the power of emotional reasoning. Let me say this again. Emotional reasoning plays a role in nearly all depression. And so honoring God and being obedient breaks the power of emotional reasoning. And it helps the depressed person walk out of the darkness into the light. So when you are feeling abandoned by God, you have to remember that He promised that He would never leave us nor forsake us. When you feel worthless, you have to realize that He paid the ultimate price because of your value. Let me encourage this. When you feel worthless, do something for someone else, and it'll break your worthless. All of a sudden, you'll feel like you have value. Ever notice that when you feel worthless, you really withdraw and you become pretty self-centered and selfish? When you feel worthless, do something for someone else, and all of a sudden, you'll add value to your life. When you're not in the mood to work, do something anyway. You see, being obedient is taking action. It's actually taking the action that God wants us to take. That's what being obedient is. That action will challenge the conclusion we have from our emotional reasoning and give us the momentum to move forward. See, we got to recognize the truth. After the physical symptoms of depression are gone and the dark cloud has disappeared, the question of purpose still remains. You know it's true. Like, how do you bring your will in line with God's will and be obedient to the truth? Well, there are a lot of ways, but the best way, we've talked about this already before, is prayer. Lord, I give you my hurts. Lord, I give you my grief. Lord, I give you my despair. Lord, I forgive the person who hurt me. Lord, I give you my past. Lord, I'm releasing it to you. You have to prayerfully affirm living a purposeful life. Lord, I see myself in your will. Lord, I see myself free from depression. The real issue is about trust and obedience. And even a man like Solomon, who was the wisest person in the world, found that very difficult. And if Solomon could be a person who found trust and obedience difficult, what about me? What about you? We've all been there. Can I close us out today with this kind of thought? Sometimes the wise ain't so smart. That's a Southern term. Now, if you've listened to me a little bit, you probably have figured out by now I am from the southern part of the United States. And so we might use the word ain't quite a bit. You just got to keep up here. Like, sometimes the wise ain't so smart. Solomon, the wisest ever, turned to idols at the last part of his life. He ignored his own advice to honor and obey God. And consequently, whatever he was looking for, he never found it because he would use terms like chasing the wind. In other words, it eluded him as he chased other gods. Listen, meaning is found in reverencing and obeying God. It fulfills the purpose for which we were first created. And sometimes the greatest problems are solved by the simplest answers. Return to our original purpose. Reverencing and obeying God. Solomon could know the truth. He could even speak the truth, and he did, and still not realize the impact of what he was saying. At least not enough to make a difference in his own life. So how about you? What are your conclusions when we think about a guy like Solomon? How could he experience depression? And is depression something that I would relate as Solomon did to, I just feel like I'm chasing the wind? Does the place where you are in life have any effect in making you depressed? You might need to change your position. Because having a sense of purpose is incredibly important. Knowing that our feelings aren't always reliable is very important. And so, how can we, as people who maybe struggle with depression, walk in obedience when we don't feel like being obedient? I mean, it's a great question. Why couldn't Solomon follow his own advice? I ask that question of myself. It's not like I don't know the answer. It's just, why can't I follow my own advice? Why can't I follow my own truth that I would give to other people? And I need you to understand that as a depressed person, it's very, very important to realize that obedience always makes a difference. And it doesn't have to always feel good. Remember, when we do the right things, we get the right results. And maybe those right results don't come the very next day, but they will come. Trusting and obedience. Those are two of the key things that we have to press into if we're experiencing depression. And let the process be the process. And darkness will be moved on and light will come. I hope this helped you today. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor. Share this podcast on your social media platform. Share the link, like this, add a comment. It helps the algorithm. We're trying to build this because I think that there are a lot of people who want to talk about it, but just don't know how. I thank you so much for listening. I love all you guys. Thank you for your feedback and all of your encouragement. It's so much fun. I'm looking forward to, as we come to, I think we got 2 more episodes after this one on depression. We're going to move on to our next topic, season 2. And so I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback on what is another topic you would like to talk about. Until then, God bless you, and I'll see you soon.